equation, x equals the square root of 6x minus 8. How do we undo a square root? Square both sides. Good. So if you square both sides, notice the x on the left side is going to become an x squared. So now we get x squared equals 6x minus 8. Where should I move everything to? To the left, so x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. Is that factorable? Factors of 8 that get to negative 6. Yeah, negative 2 and negative 4, right? So x minus 4, x minus 2 is equal to 0. So my solutions are 4 and 2. Because I do have a square root sign, let's quickly check it just to make sure both work. 6 times 4 is 24. 24 minus 8 is 16. Is the square root of 16 4? Yeah. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 minus 8 is 4. Is the square root of 4 2? Yeah. So we know that those are correct solutions. Okay. Questions with that one? All right. On to the next. X plus the square root of x equals 6. Now we're going to get a little bit more complicated because we're going to have to do some foiling in this case. But before I can do any squaring of anything, we need to get that square root sign all by itself. To get the square root sign all by itself, we're going to have to move this x term over to the other side. So then we get the square root of x equals 6 minus x. Now my square root sign is all by itself. So we're going to go ahead and square. And we're going to square this whole entire thing as one unit. Because that means I need to rewrite it twice. And do some multiplication. So 6 times 6 gets us to 36. 6 times negative x. Negative 6x. Negative x times 6 is negative 6x. Negative x times negative x is positive x squared. Let's rewrite this in standard form. So it looks like we're getting x equals x squared minus 12x plus 36. Got to get this to be a 0, so that means I'm going to move that x over by subtracting it to both sides. So 0 equals x squared minus 13x plus 36. Yeah, 4 and 9 would factor that, right? Negative 4, negative 9. So we get x minus 4, x minus 9 is equal to 0. So my two solutions would be 4 and 9. Let's quickly check to make sure we're good to go. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 plus 4 is 6. That one's good. Square root of 9 is 3. 3 plus 9 is, no, hold on. Square root of 9 is 3. 3 plus 9 is definitely not 6, is it? Square root of 4 is 2. Yep, so 9's not a solution, is it? I'm doing that right, right? Square root of 9 and 9. So it'll be 3 plus 9, which is 12. So our only solution is 4. So far, so good. All right. Next one. Now we're going to take it to those U substitution problems that we've seen in the past. So now we have x to the 4th minus 13x squared plus 36. Now remember, back when we were factoring these x to the 4ths, like if I had x to the 4th minus 16, that would just be x squared plus 4, x squared minus 4, which means we need an exponent of 2 on both of these x terms to get to x to the 4th. Well, the same thing's going to apply here. We're just not quite sure if we can factor that or not. So I like to use the u substitution. It makes it easier on me, especially when we get to higher things. The trick when you do u substitution is you always let u be the middle term. So if I let u equal x squared, then this whole entire equation becomes u squared minus 13u plus 36 is equal to 0. Is that factorable? Yeah, we just did it, right? -9 and -4. So that factors to u minus 9, u minus 4 is equal to 0. So u is equal to 9 is one of my equations, and u equals 4 is one of my other my other equation. That's not my final answer because up here we said u is equal to x squared. So now I'm going to substitute x squared back in. So we get the equation x squared equals 9 and x squared equals 4. So what's my solution for the first part? Oh, positive -3, right? So x equals positive -3. And over here it would be x equals positive -2. If we check them, I'm sure we would be good to go by simply just plugging them into my calculator. So 3 to the 4th, oh, that's not a 3, 3 to the 4th minus 13 times 3 squared plus 36 gets me 0. And when I'm typing in -3 into my calculator, I'm making sure to put parentheses around it. So -3 to the 4th minus 13 times parentheses -3 squared plus 36 is 0. If I do the same thing with 2 to the 4th. Huh? Yeah, it shouldn't make a difference. You are correct. So 2 to the 4th minus 13 times 2 squared plus 36. Got to hit the right arrow. Plus 36 gets me to 0, so we know we're good to go. So how do we write that? So my solutions, smallest would be what? -3, then -2, then +2, then +3. Or if you just want to write it +-3, +-2, either would work for a solution. Alright, so let's make it a little bit more complicated than just to a 4th power. Let's make it to a 6th power. So we have 4x to the 6th plus 1 equals 5x to the 3rd. Should we move everything to the left or to the right? To the left. So that 5x to the 3rd is going to become minus 5x to the 3rd plus 1 equals 0. All right, let's do some u substitution just to simplify our equation. What should we let u equal? We'll just do the x to the 3rd. Don't worry about the coefficient. So just make it x to the 3rd. So then my equation becomes 4x. Now what do I multiply 3 by to get to 6? 2. So this will be 4x squared. Or sorry, not x squared, u squared. Minus 5u plus 1 equals 0. I'm going to try to factor that. Quadratic formula. What do you want to do? Is it factorable? 4 times 1 is 4. Factors of 4 that add up to 5. -4 and -1. Put them both over 4. So -4 over 4 reduces to -1 and -1/4. So what are my parentheses going to look like? Yeah, well, u minus 1, and then 4u minus 1 is equal to 0. So give me 2 equations. First one's going to be what? U equals 1, and u equals 1/4. Right? Put my 0 here. So now instead of u, let's bring back that x to the 3rd power. So x to the 3rd equals 1. x to the third equals 1/4. How do you undo a third root? Yeah, you would take the cube root, or if you want to go back to last chapter, what can I multiply 3 by to get to a 1/3, and isn't taking a cube root of something the same as taking it to the 1/3 exponent? Yeah, so either would work. That's up to you on how you want to do it. So you can either take the cube root, or you can write it as the 1/3 power. Which would you guys prefer? 1/3 power? Either works, because it means the same thing. So if I take it to the 1/3 power on both sides, on my calculator I could type in 1 to the 1/3 power, or I could think about the cube root of 1. What would be the cube root of 1? 1. There is no plus or minus, because it is just positive 1. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. What's going to be the cube root of 1/4? So cube root, cube root. Well, the cube root of 1 we know is 1. Is the cube root of 4 a perfect cube? No, it is a perfect square. All right, so one of our solutions we know is 1. Let's get that up there. Now let's think about the cube root of 1/4, which really is 1 over the cube root of 4. Is that allowed? How do we rationalize that? How many more? Well, let's simplify this. 4 really is the same as what? 2 times 2? Because my index is 3, how many 2's do I need? 3. So I need to add how many more? 1. So if I multiply by a cube root of 2, what would I get in the denominator? 2. And what would be in the numerator? Yeah, 1 cube root of 2. So we get the cube root of 2 over 2. Not quite as nice, but that's okay. That's why we just had chapter 8, so we couldn't do those problems. All right, we're going to step it up one more notch. Let's throw some fractions into the mix. There we go. 2x to the 2/3 minus 11x to the 1/3 plus 12. Which we let our u represent. Let u equal x to what power? 1/3. Good. And what's going to be nice about that is it will then end up being squared 1 and 0. So my new equation becomes 2u squared, because 2 times 1/3 is 2/3, minus 11u plus 12 is equal to 0. Let's see if we can factor that. 2 times 12 is 24. Are there any factors of 24 that add up to 11? 8 and 3, right? And they both have to be negative. So negative 8, negative 3. Put those both over your leading coefficient, which is 2. Negative 8 over 2 reduces to negative 4. So in factored form, I get u minus 4, 2u minus 3 is equal to 0. So my first equation is going to be u equals 4. Second one would be u equals 3/2. Now let's bring back in our x to the 1/3 power. So x to the 1/3 equals 4. X to the 1/3 equals 3/2. Now this is kind of the reverse of what we just did. Before we had a power of 3, And we either cube rooted it or we took it to the 1/3 power. So how am I going to turn this into a 1? Take it to the 3rd power, right? Because isn't this technically, that's technically the same as the cube root of x equals 4. To undo a cube root, you would take it to the 3rd power. Well, the same thing could happen just up here. So you just take it to the 3rd power, take it to the 3rd power. So then we get x is equal to 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is what, 64? So x equals 64. Over here, to get rid of your 1/3 power and turn it into an exponent of 1, we're going to take it to the 3rd power, which means I'm going to take this whole entire fraction to the 3rd power, which means I'm going to take the 3 to the 3rd power, which is 27. I'm going to take the 2 to the 3rd power, which is 8. So 27 over 8. So my two solutions are 27/8 and 64. Okay. All right, last one. What if our u substitution ends up being an expression? So we have 2 times the quantity 4x minus 3 squared plus 7 times the quantity 4x minus 3 plus 5. Now, yes, I could multiply all of this out and put it into standard form. That's just a whole lot of work. I could FOIL this, I could distribute this, I can combine like terms, and then I could either try to factor that or use the quadratic formula or try to complete the square on it. But if we use just simple u substitution and let u equal 4x minus 3, my equation becomes a lot nicer, because now it just becomes 2u squared plus a 7u plus 5 is equal to 0. Can we factor that? 2 times 5 is 10. Are there factors of 10 that add up to 7? Yeah, 2 and 5. My leading coefficient is 2. Let's put them both over 2. 2 over 2 reduces to 1. So we end up with a u plus a 1 and a 2u plus 5 equals 0. So this is going to give me u equals -1. The second factor is going to get me u is equal to -5/2. Don't stop there. We got to plug in our expression for u. So we get 4x minus 3 equals -1. How do I solve that? Add 3, so that would become 2. So 4x equals 2. X equals 1/2. Over here, plug it in. 4x minus 3 equals -5/2. Oh boy, gotta deal with a fraction. Adding 3, it would be 6, so 1/2. So 4x equals 1/2. Dividing 1/2 by 4 would get us 1/8, right? So x equals 1/8 would be my two answers. Smallest one usually is written first. 1/8, comma, 1/2. There it be. Questions? All right. Would you like to